So, before we get started, I was curious to know how many of you think that governments should serve their communities? Yes? Okay. How many here think that the IT organization of a government should also serve the community? Show of hands. Okay, not everybody. So I want to talk to you, and I want to introduce you to a group of CISOs who are actively collaborating and serving their community just as if government is supposed to collaborate and be efficient and effective and serve everybody. And to just summarize what they did, this group of folks said, what if we were able to bring the same skills that we bring internally to government in terms of teaching folks what to do, what not to do, showing them what's in it for them, right? If they learn good anti-scam habits, cyber hygiene habits, and what if we took that to the community? Would that make the community safer? Would it make the community better? So we're going to talk about that. And before we do that, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. And let's start with Lisa Jones on my left.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Jones. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Wake County.
Hi, good morning. Marina Kelly, Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Raleigh. For those of you who are not citizens or residents of our community, welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Dustin Baptiste, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the town of Cary.
Thanks, folks. So let me ask you something. So what was this effort? I mean, aren't you supposed to fight, between, county and cities? Don't get along? I mean, what's all this collaboration? Was it authorized? And so what brought you together to have this idea and come together and collaborate? What's it all about, any of you? What's the gist?
Okay, so I'll at least start on this because I think I started this. So I met Marina and Dustin both in April of this year at a vendor event. I think it was Marina's third day on the job. And as we started looking at what we were going to do for Cybersecurity Awareness Month this year, we were challenged to take this to the community. And my first thought is a problem shared is a problem that two people have, and better a problem that three people have. So I called up my newfound friends and said, hey, we're going to try to do these community-based events. We're all in the same community. Would it make sense, or would you guys be interested in assisting or participating? So enlist the help of others.
And I couldn't answer yes fast enough.
I would say the same thing. It was kind of kismet. It was one of the things I was already meeting with my team probably the week before, trying to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to, ramp up what we did last year? And next thing I know, Lisa's calling me, and I'm like, absolutely, I'm in.
Yeah, and it was literally my third day when I met the two of them. And what I remember most about the job description that I responded to that had been put out by the City of Raleigh was the word relationship was used more than any other word in that job description. The importance of relationship building. And this was such a great opportunity to do that.
Thanks, y'all. So, but why educate the public, right? Is that even our job? I mean, who cares if people get scammed and they jam up the phone lines of the police department? I mean, is this really our job to educate any of you?
So as a person who started her career as an educator for the first decade, yes.
Yes.
We have a responsibility to our residents, and some of our residents are actually our employees. And so
Right.
having that holistic approach really helps us to make sure that we have a secured employee base when they're out working remotely or working in hybrid work settings. And so the more we do to educate the public, the easier our jobs actually do become, I think.
Thank you, Marina.
I would say, just to kind of tie into it, I look at it from almost like a service provider viewpoint. IT and, of course, information security ultimately is a service provider to the organization. Citizens are part of that organization. It's not just employees that are data that we're dealing with and processing on a regular basis. So by proxy, and to have a good security awareness program for, like I said, in the town, you need to include your citizens with that as well.
Great. So what were the brass tacks of this program? What did it look like when you implemented it?
So I'm going to say this was a learning year. This was our first attempt at trying to do something public-facing, a community-type event. And I will be the first to admit I am not an event planner. I'm definitely an introvert by nature, and this was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. But we started looking at a couple of different opportunities for different areas of the population. So who needed the most assistance? And we had kicked around a couple of ideas and kind of narrowed that down to focusing on senior citizens specifically, and then looking at our small business partners within the community. So those who have little to no IT staff or are just getting started in business or are struggling with trying to get their online presence and trying to operate in an online-first type of environment.
And there was an emphasis also trying to spread this out across Wake County, so everything wasn't just situated in Raleigh, for example.
Right.
Where could we be out in the community and make it easier for people to come to us as opposed, for them having to travel longer distances to do so?
What? Make it easy for people?
You
How
know,
long
it's
have
a-
you been in government?
Way too many years. No, it was important to us because most people, I would argue, our residents, have absolutely no idea that these three entities even have chief information security officers, and that cybersecurity is a huge part of the business practices of these entities. And so this was a really big first step into making that knowledge out there.
So Lisa mentioned lessons learned. Tell us some lessons. So you went, I think, to an elder facility. You went and you had an audience in person. Tell me about what partners did you partner with along the way, and what lessons did you learn?
So I'm going to start jokingly with some of the lessons that we learned.
Okay.
Don't try to start something like this in the year of a major election when Cybersecurity Awareness Month is in October. You also can't control the weather. So when it comes to trying to get information out, we did struggle quite a bit with trying to get information to folks about the events that were taking place because news media was 100% focused on either the election or the hurricane or relief efforts in Western North Carolina, which also had a tremendous impact on the volunteers that we had assisting us when it comes to resources. So take every opportunity that you can in events like this to network, to get to know people, because we reached out to folks that we had met through networking opportunities, as well as to our vendors, and I could point some of them out in the room today that gladly stepped up when we called and said, we'll be happy to help. What do you need? What can we provide? So it was really an effort of just picking up the phone and calling your friends, your acquaintances, and we had people coming out of the woodwork willing to help.
Great. Dustin, Marina, other lessons, positive things you learned?
I'd say probably one of the lessons is the sooner you can start it, the better.
Right.
There's definitely a lot of logistics, even ones that we didn't even think about. Like for some of the locations, we had to engage legal teams to redline, contracts for utilizing their facilities. So definitely the sooner you can, the better.
And what went well?
I think the building of relationships here amongst the three of us, we often intersect each other. We share spaces. Lisa and I share, for example, 911 services. And Dustin has water like we have water. And so that was really helpful at that, just getting to know these two people better. But also really getting out into the community, getting to know them. One of my favorite aspects of this was the first event we did was at the 5 Points Active Adult Center here in Raleigh. And AARP, which was one of our partners, had provided these red bags for us to put goodies and swag in, and we ended up just putting a bunch of information, because that's who we are, a lot of information sheets, and we gave those out as people were coming into the venue. And then at the end, we looked over and people were grabbing these by the handful and saying, oh, I am taking this back to my neighbors, to my husband or my wife, to my kids. This is really great information. It's consumable. It was easy. I can put this on my refrigerator to help remind me. So that impact was immediate, and it was wonderful.
That's awesome. So you mentioned you went to a facility where that population goes, the 5 Points Senior Center. Tell me about, were you equally successful when you went places where those folks don't gather, like at a government facility?
No, so we had, again, some trials as we were going through the events in October, and we found that we had much more success when we went to locations where the people were already interacting on a daily basis, especially with the senior citizen population. In the events where, we stood these up in locations, other locations, government facilities, we didn't have as much of a turnout. Partially, I think this is related to just not being able to get the word out and get it communicated out because of other competing events during that time, but also because someone would intentionally have to get in your car or get transportation to this location in order to attend such an event. I think what we really learned was take the information to where the people already are, and they will gladly receive it.
Thank you. So, was this a one-off experiment? Are you going to do it again? Are you traumatized? Do you need therapy? What's next?
I'll let you guys give them some.
I would hope so that we're going to do this again next year. We've already been talking about it. We're also talking about expanding it, maybe including additional groups like youth groups, things of that nature. So definitely not a one-off, and I think with all the lessons that we've learned from this one, that we'll have even more of a successful event next year.
Awesome. All right, so now some specific questions for each of you. So Marina, how did the city of Raleigh align this collaborative effort for CSAM with its internal CSAM program?
So this was a really important aspect of what we did. We have an internal Cybersecurity Awareness Month program. It had a variety of aspects to it. We were trying to be creative this year. We had a trivia day. I did a Spotify playlist for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But we interwove these events into that calendar, and so that our citizens, our employees of the city of Raleigh knew these were opportunities, so they could share that information out with their family members, their neighbors as well. So we co-joined this effort in the city of Raleigh to make it more effective.
Thank you. Dustin, Lisa, anything to add on that one?
I think she hit the nail on the head with that one. It's very similar. You'll find out, again, as she's talking about, the more we proceeded to work with each other, realize how much our different environments have in common. So it's one of the things where, you're doing this, we're doing that too. Hey, this all ties in together. So we can definitely relate with one another on that.
So speaking of that, Dustin, efforts like this can be a challenge, not just the lessons learned, but prioritizing this with all the other work that you have to do or can be challenging. What were some of the positive aspects that came out of this for you personally?
So I'd say first and foremost is being able to give back to my community. I try to whenever I can, but whenever you can align what you do for a living with giving back to the community, that's obviously always a win in my book. I think the second thing is probably getting to work with this dynamic duo over here. Both of them bring amazing strengths and talents to the table. It was a pleasure to work with them. And then anybody who's been in cybersecurity for any time knows the importance of having colleagues you can call both during and outside of crisis. So I'll already call them every once in a while. Hey, Marina, I'm trying to look at these compensating controls for this CGIS framework. Does this seem like it makes sense? Yep, I agree. So definitely having those type of colleagues that I can rely on is definitely a true blessing that came out of this.
Thank you, Dustin. And Lisa, you mentioned introversion. Not that anybody in security is introverted, but I guess some people are, right? So how do you get over that introversion to really start collaborating?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I'm probably generalizing when I say, most cybersecurity professionals are introverts, but I think probably in a greater sense, it's more of a struggle to speak plain English. If you know a cybersecurity person, we can talk in acronyms and complete sentences and for hours and never say an actual word. And sometimes that makes it difficult to translate that into something that makes sense. But I think really focusing on the relationship building aspects is what helps helps the introversion aspects of it get you out of your comfort zone, and having the ability to rely on these two great folks here to do some of the work to help, and where
Right.
it's not just up to you. And that's a tough thing. I think all of us as cybersecurity professionals kind of have this, I'm not telling anybody what I'm doing, very secretive, close to the vest. And it was a great opportunity to kind of open up and build those relationships where I can easily pick up the phone, call either of these two and say, hey, are you guys
Awesome.
seeing this, or have you encountered this?
Awesome.
And that makes it a much easier process.
Thank you. And you mentioned sponsors and partners. IT's got this reputation, and if there are vendors in this room, vendors in the room, you're going to find that a lot of vendors think that it's an IT person's job to duck vendor phone calls, right? So how did you overcome that and get the private sector vendor participation that I saw in this?
So because I was so new in my role with the city, I was just meeting a lot of these vendor representatives at that time. And so for me, it was quite easy as I was having conversations with them about products or what's coming next to say, oh, by the way, we're doing this, can you help us? And as Lisa said, absolutely no hesitation. Special shout out to Allison back there, Palo Alto. They were one of the first of our vendors to jump in with us because we share many of the same vendors, but not all of the same vendors. Right. And so we had a really good scope of those partners. And it actually they saw immediately what we were trying to do and the importance of that, even though many of them are never going to face individual residents. I don't think anybody, except for a couple people on my team, ever buy Palo Alto firewalls for their home. They were there for us, which was so important, and showed up at the events with us, right, and handed out swag to the residents, right, to help us emphasize how important cybersecurity is as a holistic approach.
Well, I think we've got time for one wrap-up comment from each of you, and we might even have time, if there's a mic runner, for audience questions. Let's start with Dustin. Closing thoughts.
Put me on the spot. Okay. Honestly, I'm just thankful that Lisa approached me and got the opportunity to do this. Again, working with them has been truly a godsend, and hey, just to kind of quote the old SECU motto, it's great just doing the right thing.
So a huge thank you to Lisa and Dustin for their support in this and their work on it. It was really important to me. I heard this stated this week actually for the first time this way, and it made huge impact on me. Our goal for all three of us is to not be the Department of No, N-O, but to become the Department of No, K-N-O-W.
I love it.
And so we want to make sure that we have this knowledge, and we get this knowledge into people's hands. It doesn't matter if you're an employee, a resident, somebody who meets me in a grocery store. Sorry, those of you who get behind me in line. But it's important that we expect expand our base and get past our introversion and understand that we're all in this together.
Lisa?
I guess my parting thought on this is we focus a lot on our internal employees and our cybersecurity awareness, but don't necessarily stop and think about what do they do when they leave the office. They have families at home. Are we providing them with enough information for them to help their families, to help their neighbors? Dustin and I were actually talking earlier today, and when we started talking about focusing on senior citizens, I think everyone has the perfect story of, oh, my parents called me and I can't believe they did this, or they're asking this. Think about the folks out there that don't have a Dustin or a Marina or a Lisa to call.
Right.
Who are they supposed to go ask? So be the resource for those folks as well. And I think just being available and being open to answering questions is really the key point.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Do we have a mic runner? Are there questions?
We have a few minutes for
this
questions if
fine
anybody
team.
has it. Yeah.
Run, Zach.
Hi, I'm sorry if I missed it or went over my head, but can you give more details about the events that you held? What exactly they entailed?
Thanks
So-
for the question. Yeah.
So we did two different types of events. So for our senior citizens, we did a panel event and had multiple panelists coming in talking about basic cybersecurity, answering questions, but focusing on things that they would encounter in their normal day-to-day life. So, how to use your cell phone, common tactics for dealing with scams and the phone calls and the constant, your car warranty has expired, or some of the more common scams. In at least the first event, one of our panelists was a former fraud investigator with the U.S. Attorney General's office, and he actually brought a great perspective to what he had seen from an elder fraud perspective, and I was really impressed with the questions that we did get from the seniors in those events. For the small business events, we did focus on just basic cyber hygiene and things that from a small organization that they could do without having to spend a ton of money. We worked directly with CISA for that and focused a lot on I can't say free, the no-cost options that were available to them that most people aren't even aware exist, and making sure that they had access to resources that could help them build their business and build their security.
Thank you, Lisa. Great question. We got time for one more.
Yeah. Anybody else? Or did you cover all the Yeah.
Did you find yourself running into any conflicts between the legal area and the budgeting area with working with sponsors versus the government funds that you had available for these type of events?
So we had zero funding for this.
No, that was the beautiful thing. I think y'all used community facilities for the most part.
The facilities were, for the most part, donated. It was our time and efforts. Our sponsors, so our vendors, they donated their time, their effort, swag. So there was
Food and water.
Yeah, food and water.
Yeah.
AARP partnered with us, so that was again a no-cost effort. So there was zero budget for this year. We're probably going to request a little bit of budget next year, so
Great question. Thank
try
you.
to help that. But
Well, I have to tell you, I learned a lot from these folks, and I even learned that I should stop baiting the scam calls and stop talking to them, because why? I learned that AI will imitate your voice and use it for a grandmother scam or whatever. So I've been doing this 30 years, and I learned something there. So it was a fantastic program. Marina, I thought you said it so well, just like in COVID. We are all in this together. Let's give it up for this brilliant panel. Thank you.